Hey everybody, welcome back to Learning to Light. My name is Kevin Geary. So here's the deal. I think it's really important when you want to get better at photography, when you want to get better at lighting, you have to study pictures, images of people who you admire or just anytime you come across great images, it's really important to study those images. Try to break down the lighting, right? Reverse engineer a bunch of things about how the image was made. And that really helps you when you go to create your images. So what I've done is I've gone to a site called 500pixels.com, 500px.com. Great site for great imagery. And I have chosen 5 random pictures that I'm going to analyze to study today. And I'm going to let you in on kind of how I do this, the thought process that I go through. I'm going to show you how to reverse engineer lighting, reverse engineer focal lengths of lenses, and so on and so forth, because this is the key really to getting better. You can go out and practice with your camera. That's great, right? But if you're not studying the work of people who are doing great work, then it's going to severely limit you. You have to study great work in order to become a better photographer and better at lighting. So I'm going to show you my process for doing this today. If this is a popular breakdown video, then I'm going to do far more of these in the future, and I'll do them with famous photographers' work. Right now I'm just doing random images kind of as a test. So let me know in the comments what you think about this breakdown. And this kind of process of studying and reverse engineering images, and let me know if this is valuable to you, right? And I'll do more of them. So, all right, I'm going to pull up these 5 images on my computer in Photoshop, and we will get to work. Okay, so I've got our 5 images pulled up in Photoshop, and I want to remind everybody, these are not my images. These are random images that I pulled from 500pixels.com for the purpose of this breakdown, of this reverse engineering process. I'm going to show you kind of what I go through, the process that I go through to study the work of other photographers and figure out how I can make my own work better using them and their techniques as motivation, right? Very important. So here's the first image that I have pulled up. Let me zoom in a little bit here. The first thing that I notice about pictures that I want to know is, what is the depth of field like, and what kind of focal length do I believe was used here? And even what type of camera, right? What was it, a crop sensor? Was it a full frame sensor? Was it medium format? And this is not always easy to determine. And I'm not even sure if I'm right, but I know that I can get in the ballpark of what was going on here. The next thing I look at is lighting. Then I look at posing. How did they get this? How did they get to this pose? How did they direct the model? What is the expression like? What are the standout elements of the photo that cause me to say, wow, I really like that picture? And then I can take that knowledge, that insight, back into my own work, and as a result, get better. So I'm looking at this photo here, and the first thing I realize is a very shallow depth of field, right? You can see, let me grab my pin here. You can see the outline. Oh, well, look at that. I have a crazy arrow brush chosen. You can see, like, along this line right there, that is very defined. And then as it goes in below that, her neck, her collarbone, her shoulders, her hair, all of this is very out of focus, right? That is pretty extreme depth of field. I also see, like, just looking at the image, I feel like there's a lot of compression, and that happens when you use a very long focal length. I'm not sure if this was either shot with a long focal length at a shallow depth of field. We're talking definitely, I would say 135 millimeter to 200 millimeter, or this is a medium format image. So medium format increases the depth of field kind of look because of the size of the sensor. So with that out of the way, I'm now going to kind of just look at the lighting here and the background. We see the background is very plain. So what could accomplish this, right? If I'm trying to recreate this look, pretty much any studio background, paper background or whatever, whether it's white, whether it's a light gray, you could easily recreate this look. I don't feel like the background is lit at all. I feel like it was evenly lit just by whatever lighting was used. We'll talk about that in a second. The darkness in these areas here is just a vignette, right? This is like added in post. So a lot of times what you'll see is you'll see lightness like in here, and you'll wonder, was that lit, right? Well, it can look like it was lit simply because a vignette was added. So I would say that this is vignetting, that the background was not lit specifically. So now let's look at the lighting on the face. And when you are trying to reverse engineer lighting, it's really important. Number one, the first thing I always look at is the eyes. The second thing I look at is where the shadows are falling. But the eyes gives you, most of the time, all of the information about any lights that were facing the subject. And if we see here, we are getting two separate catch lights, right? And let's talk about what shape those catch lights are. They're square. They also, well, I should say rectangle. Excuse me, they're rectangle. So we're either dealing with normal rectangular soft boxes or even strip boxes possibly. And there's one on each side, right? So it's kind of giving almost this like cat eye-like effect, which I think is very cool. You can see it, they're extremely soft. The catch lights are big, so that tells me they're rather close to the model. The further away you get, the smaller the catch light is going to be. And because they're so close, you see how soft the shadowing is. And it really gives this image a very painterly-like feel. And I think that's it really with the lighting. It's just very straightforward. One strip box or rectangular soft box on each side of the camera. You can see the shadowing in this area caused by the hair. Again, this is very, very soft shadow. And that's really all that happened with this photo, right? So if you wanted to create this look, that would be the kind of setup process you would go for. You would bring in your soft boxes on each side, and you would be pretty much done with this shot. And it just happens to be a beautiful model, of course. You get that long focal length and that shallow depth of field, and you can create this exact same look. So I just wanted to start out. The other reason I wanted to choose this picture is because people always wonder about catch lights in the eyes regarding how many can there be? Like, is it okay if there are two catch lights in the eyes? And I say yes, absolutely. I mean, look at the picture. It's a beautiful portrait. There's two catch lights. I do think it helps, though, and it should be noted that the catch lights are very symmetrical. If your catch lights are oddly placed, or one is much larger than the other, and, they're not so symmetrical, it can look a little awkward. This works because they're really symmetrical. Very similar in size. So I think that is the reason why this works. I would also say, if you look at the lighting on her face, they're almost equal power to each other, right? Like one side is not darker than the other side. So it's just pretty flat lighting and great catch lights in the eyes, a sharp picture, focus on the eyes, and the depth of field is what is really creating the kind of uniqueness of this look. All right, let's go to the next one. So this one was really interesting to me. Again, we are going to try to break down the lighting. Obviously, you can see let me make a new layer here. Obviously, you can see the background again is just a plain studio background. A dark background would work really well for this, but you can do this with a light background as well, a white background. All depends on the f-stop that the photo was taken at. We can see that everything is in focus, so we're not dealing with a shallow depth of field here. We don't have access to the eyes, so it's going to be really difficult to determine, based on looking at the eyes, where the lighting was. So we're going to have to look at other things. The first thing I want you to notice is this light right here that's kind of rimming him. And if we look at his hair as well, we can see that there's light like coming through the hair from the back. And that is what's causing all of this that I just outlined, is a light that's pointed at him from behind him. It's also creating let me make a new layer here. It's also creating this glow around him. That is not the background being lit. That's glow coming from light that's facing the camera from behind the subject. All right, so light number 1 is behind the subject, facing the camera, right? Now we see there's other light in this scene. There's light hitting the fingers right here. There's light hitting the shoulders. There's light hitting the back of the head and the front of the head as well, right? So where is that light coming from? I would say it's coming from here, and it's kind of down at an angle, right? So it's hitting, because his fingers happen to be in front of his face, that light's coming through and hitting the fingers here. And I would say that this light is kind of angled down at a 45-degree angle above him, because the light wraps all the way to the top of his head over here. Like if the light was down low right here, just lighting from this side, it would be really hard to get that light up here hitting the top, right? So I would say that that light is coming down at this angle right here. So it's providing the light on the shoulders and the neck right here, and then around to the top of the head. Then we ask, all right, what else is going on here? Could there be any other light in the scene? And the question is, I'm not really sure, but what I do know is this lightness right here, while it could be added in post a lot, it also probably has come via a fill light on access that's at a very, very low power, or just a simple fill card, right? But if you think about backlighting somebody, normally you end up with a silhouette in front. Now, this light coming from this direction, I mean, it's possible that it's contributing light here, but I would say that if you wanted to recreate this look, almost certainly you would want a fill card in front to pop light back into the front of the subject. And this is all really dependent too on where the walls are in this room and what f-stop this was taken at, that sort of thing, right? Because if you have really light walls around, all that light's going to kind of bounce and naturally fill in the front of this subject, especially at possible lower f-stops like f4, f5.6, things like that. So it's really hard to determine whether a fill card was used on front, but depending on your settings and the environment you're shooting in order to get details on the front of the subject, you would want to have at least a fill card on hand or an on-axis fill light. We also just have the subject kind of facing the side, holding his chin. You know, this is looking at focal length here. This could be done with a 50mm lens on a full frame camera, possibly even a 35mm lens on a full frame camera. So I don't feel like this was taken at a really long focal length. I just feel like it's kind of like just a natural focal length, 35 to 50mm, probably 85 at the max. Okay, so that's really that. I think that one was fairly simple. Let's go on to the next one, see what's going on here. I really liked this one, and one of the reasons that I chose this one is because I think, especially with beginners, you're sitting down, you're trying to light somebody, and almost always you put the light in front of them, right? And this goes to show that a lot of the most intriguing light does not come from in front of the subject. The most intriguing light comes from behind the subject. So you can see here that this particular lighting is coming from the backside, leaving this side in shadow, which is a very cool look. I love this look a lot. Let's look at some other things about this. Notice down here, the shallow depth of field. Again, even in the beard, right? On this side of the face especially, we are shooting again with shallow depth of field, probably a longer focal length, and wide open. So this gives you an idea of how this look itself is made. It's not just the lighting, but it's the lens camera combination as well, or the lens sensor combination as well. Now, I'm looking at the eyes here, right? And I'm not seeing a light source off to this side for this, right? I'm seeing a light source here, which seems like coming from this way. So I don't know if this is another light that's providing some fill or a fill card itself, right? But we are getting catch lights from something coming from that general area right there. Possibly a fill card. Again, not sure. But you do want this portrait would not be as engaging if there weren't catch lights. Those catch lights really add to how engaging this portrait is. So even if you're not trying to fill shadows or anything like that, if you're positioning a light back here and it's not catching in the eyes, putting something here just to make the eyes pop is really, really important for your portraits. This is in complete blackness, but again, I don't know if this is due to vignette, right? Could it be that there's a vignette on this entire picture causing the darkness here? Maybe there were more details in the shadows in the original, but because of the processing and the vignette added, there are not details anymore. But I think it really, really works. The subject is looking down, and it also works really well when the nose is facing a certain direction for the eyes to face that pretty much same direction, right? If the eyes were looking, if the eyes were looking at us, it might still be engaging, but it would be more of like a traditional headshot type portrait where this direction of the eyes lends more to like mystery and like we don't know what he's looking at, and it just lends an attitude and an ambiance to the picture that would be totally different if he were looking at the camera. So keep that in mind as well. One of my biggest pet peeves is they're not looking at the camera, right? Of course, like there's a lot of benefit to not having to have a subject not look at the camera, just as there's a lot of benefit to having a subject look at the camera. It's up to you as the photographer to determine what is going to create the best and most intriguing and engaging image. And for me, I love the fact that he's not looking at the camera. All right, so I'm pretty sure this is one light here with something in this general direction to fill. So possibly two lights, but could be done with one definitely. So let's go to the next one. Let me zoom out here a little bit. All right. So let's talk. This is obviously made to look like it was taken outside in the snow, but I'm not so sure that this is real snow. Not positive. I mean, it could be, but I'm not positive. But let's look at the focal length first. To me, this looks, I mean, there's definitely shallow depth of field because you can see the flakes are out of focus, right? So it's, if we look at the jacket right here, definitely a shallower depth of field. I'm guessing probably around 85 to 135 millimeter focal length here. Now let's look at the lighting. Definitely a source coming from this way. And if they were outside, this could be like the sun, right? So you use the sun very often as a rim light. But for some reason, I don't feel like this was taken outside. I feel like that is just a light behind him made to look like the sun. So we'll say that is light number 1. Of course, that light cannot make this light on the face, right? So what is making that light on the face also can't make these catch lights in the eyes. So that has to be a different light, right? Number 2. Now I'm looking at the picture saying, okay, what kind of light is that? If we zoom in, you can see, again, the catch lights tell you the story of what happened here. That is not a perfectly round catch light, so it's not an umbrella. What it looks to be is an octagon type shape. You can see the kind of defined edges here. And then if you notice right in here, if I can kind of draw on that, there's a black mark through the catch light, and it also slightly happens over here. So when I'm looking at these catch lights, I'm not just looking at like direction of or placement of the light. I'm looking at what type of light was used. And that is a very distinct, when you have the octagon look with a light here, it is a shoot through style modifier, probably a soft lighter. So let me show you very, very popular light here. I have one as well. It's called a Photech soft lighter, and I'm going to show you. Oh, that's a 46-inch version. There's the 60-inch version. I guess they look the same, so it doesn't really matter. But the light goes into the center of the flash and then comes back out after it bounces in. And when you put, let me see if I can grab this here. All right, let's pull this into Photoshop so I can kind of show you what happens with this. Okay. So when you put this on a stand, and these kind of work really well on booms, right? So you can use them better on booms. The arm of the boom, here's the flash, goes in the center, and the arm of the boom comes off to here, and then here's your stand, right? So that, when I'm looking and I see this octagon shape in the eye, and then I see a black kind of line cutting into the catch light, that tells me that that was on a boom, and it was probably exactly this modifier right there. So you're asking yourself, like, how can I recreate? Let me go back to the catch light here. You see that octagon and then that black line in the middle. It's almost certain that that was the exact modifier used, and say, oh, I can recreate that, right? And it's obvious that it was a large modifier because that is a large catch light in the eye. It's also very close to the subject. You can see the softness of shadows in this area right here, very soft shadows. The only other thing about this photo is I'm wondering what's creating the light here, right? It's possible that that this light here is coming more centrally, right, and hitting here, or there's another light on this side or even straight behind that is contributing to this right here. Again, you can't be positive with these sorts of things, but you're just trying to say, how would I recreate this, and where did the main light sources come from? The reason that I initially thought that this was definitely placement of light number one is because of the hair, right? So you say that if that light right there was more centrally placed, how would this get lit? Because this coat jacket, or this the part of the coat right here, protects the hair. So there has to be a light coming from this side in order to light that hair right there. So it's possible that we're working with 3 separate lights here. And again, it's not implausible that that main light here is causing some of that rim type look as well. Okay, let's do our last image. Very, very engaging image here. Let me see if I can align it properly. Looking at this, the first thing I'm going to say to myself is, how did they get out into the middle of an ocean or a lake or whatever this is to shoot this picture? And I think the answer is they didn't. They didn't. If I had to guess, this is a composite shot where we had a subject in real water, right, but composited into this image at about there somewhere, right? So where all of this is fake, or I mean, obviously it's real, but it's not the original picture, right? And then all of the subject and what's in front here is real, is what was actually shot for this picture. That would be my guess. Now, they hide it really well. It's a very smooth transition between this water and this water. But if you look at like this ripple and the ripple right behind him, the distance and like the size of the water here versus the size of the water here just changes very, very rapidly in what seems like it would not be normal. You see the same kind of effect here where, like, look at the depth of this wave and then nothing behind it with any sort of depth that matches. That's really suspect to me. But the color grading is so well done that there's no defining point between the lights and darks of where this was stitched together, which makes it very good. I'm also wondering, like, if the bubbles here, if we zoom in, like, I'm not so sure that like that bubble that's resting kind of on his shirt, or this bubble here, I'm not so sure those are real bubbles. These bubbles in here do not look real to me. They don't look the same, on the same plane as the water that they claim to be sitting on top of. Same with those. Same with that. That looks a little too in focus. Like, look how much blurrier the water around it is. It just leads me to believe that that was all added in post-production. The other reason I feel like this was a composite and was this part of the water, it was shot in studio, is if you look at, you imagine like, okay, you would have to put this person in a tub of some sort, right? You're lighting the subject. So if we look at the main light here, it's not tabletopped over him. It's most likely like a beauty dish at a 45-degree angle in front of him. And there's a classic butterfly shadow right here under the nose in kind of the shape of a butterfly that is caused by that lighting. And you can see just a little glimpse of the catch light there. And it shows you that is the position of the light, right? So we have the light coming in from the front down at an angle. And I'm thinking, how are we getting light behind him in the water? You see in here, in this area, right? That's behind the subject in the water. And I'm thinking, if you're sitting in a tub, well, that tub is very small, and light can easily bounce and reflect off whatever's kind of behind you in the tub, even if it's dark, right? Whereas if he was really in a lake like this, I mean, that would be pitch black in there behind him. Now, this would be correct, right? But behind him, the water would be pitch black. There's no way the light would really reach, and there's nothing for it to reflect off of. It would just go into total. See this type of darkness here? That's what you would expect to see. You wouldn't expect to see like reflected looking light behind him. So that leads me to believe that he was just shot in some sort of tub and then put into this scene. They also did a good job of creating a horizon here that's not straight. And I say that that's a good job because let me go and add a guide. So that's where the horizon kind of should be, right? And most people would think that this is a mistake to not have a straight horizon. But to me, it adds to, this is a shot where there's a lot of like out of control feeling going on. Like we have a guy just floating in water. Like did he get left behind by a boat? Like, is he about to die? What's going on here? Is he committing suicide? What's going on? We don't know. There's some chaos built into the shot, and I feel like having that horizon not be straight adds to the chaos of the shot. I like the fact that the horizon's not straight. And usually when you're compositing, if you make everything exactly perfect, people are going to easily see, oh, this has got to be a composite, right? Too much stuff is like perfect about this. So adding little imperfections like this, where the horizon's not straight, right, lends to like a more realistic approach. Like if you were going to spend so much time editing this picture, compositing it all together, surely you would make a straight horizon. No, we didn't make a straight horizon, right? And like I said earlier, it adds to the chaos of the shot. But I'm thinking this is one light, again, beauty dish, 45-degree angle in front of subject, and then shot in a tub, composited together, some bubbles added for more effect, and just a great background and great color grading, letting you know that this was shot or supposedly shot outside in a real lake. And I would say that we're looking at a focal length of like 50 millimeter, 35 millimeter here. That gives that really close-up shot, but also puts a lot of information into the environment. And you've got great clouds that add to this shot. Like without these clouds, this shot would be nothing, right? And it probably wouldn't be as effective without some land back there as well, right? This is kind of like gives you feel like they're just offshore, like there's hope or something, I'm not really sure. You can tell yourself a lot of stories, and that's what makes a great image. It allows you to tell yourself stories about what was going on in this image. But I really love this image, and it's very simple. Again, one light, right? And then some great compositing skills, most likely, to create a final image. All right, guys, I hope you got a lot out of this breakdown. I just think it's important to, when you come across great pictures, again, to study, to try to reverse engineer the lighting, the focal length, because lighting and focal length and elements, photographic elements, clouds and horizons and water and things like that, those are what make great images. And the more that you study this kind of stuff from great pictures, the more you're going to be able to put it into your own work. All right, let me know in the comments what you thought about this breakdown. And hopefully, if you like them, we will do a lot more of these. All right, guys, have a great day.